Hey folks, with us today, Paul, co-founder of StreamKap. Super happy to have you on.
Thanks, Nicholas. Yeah, excited to join. Appreciate the invite.
Awesome. And StreamKap is super technical, so I would love for you to explain it for a dummy like me.
Yeah, so when I'm talking to folks who are kind of not in the data world, the thing that I generally start with is like if you think about your experience using something like Uber, um, you're on the app, you're looking at where that car is, and you're waiting for it, and that's all real time data, right? And you can imagine that if the data about where that car was, or on the other side, where the from a driver perspective, where the passengers are that you need to pick up, if that data wasn't available in real time, it would be problematic, right? And a lot of the historical data infrastructure is built around batch processing, where every night or maybe every hour a bunch of data gets loaded. Those kind of processes would not be very useful for an experience like you're accustomed to in Uber. And now Uber is obviously a really big company with a huge engineering team, and they're able to build and manage some of these systems in house. But for most businesses, even some large ones, that's just more than their engineering team can handle or wants to handle. And so we provide some of the infrastructure that powers that real time streaming data that enables folks to build really great customer experiences typically.
So you basically abstract that complexity away for them so they can really focus on the core of their product and can use you to make that super easy and basically plug it in.
That's right. Yeah, we do. And we don't do the app development, that side of things, but sort of the underlying data infrastructure is very complex to manage with by yourself, basically. And with StreamKap, it's something where in a couple of minutes you can get data moving and with sub-second latency.
I love that. And then let's go back in time a couple of years. You started out in sales, became a VP of product in the tech industry, and then made the jump to being a founder. What did push you initially to make that jump into entrepreneurship?
So I think it was always something that I was interested in, and I ended up going to work for Ricky, who's my co-founder now, at a data company that he started called Aurora, and that was built around those batch processes I described earlier, but it's sort of an end-to-end solution for folks to power like their internal business intelligence reporting stuff. And that business, we ran into some challenges and COVID, and it ultimately didn't really work out. But a couple of kind of key things happened. One is Ricky and I got along really well. We found we had a good partnership there, and we also started to see the emergence of more and more of these like streaming and real time use cases. And we also we met customers who were trying to build this up themselves, spending months of time with their development teams getting there, and we really felt like it was a problem that we could go and solve. So I think it was this underlying, I guess, desire for me personally that I'd always been interested in, and then we had a good confluence of a good partnership between the two of us, a clear problem that we wanted to solve, and with Aurora not working out, we actually did a spin out for that, which was sort of intermediate step, I guess, along the way, which I left to go run. So I had a little bit of experience running a company, and then we sold that company, and then that was sort of we were thinking, all right, what do we do next? And that's what we decided to start StreamKap.
So the spin out you're mentioning, is that Gravity, which you sold within a year?
That's right. Yeah.
Got it. Because that's in like it's different, but in a very similar space. Did you have, I know a couple of founders who had access and then had quite gnarly non-competes. Is that something you had an issue with? And like, if yes, how did you navigate that while basically moving on and like doing in your next company?
It was something we were able to negotiate. Like we knew we wanted to start StreamKap, And as a part of the sale process, we had a good agreement that like the company that was buying Gravity was not pursuing the streaming side of things. Gravity didn't do streaming, and so while like at a high level, both companies are do data pipelines, the sort of problems that they're solving were different enough that it was something everybody was comfortable with moving forward, and we didn't have non-competes associated with it. And in fact, that it's something where they're interested in partnering with us to help solve some of the streaming stuff that we're doing. So basically, all the Gravity IP went to the acquiring company, and then we went off to go tackle this new challenge.
I think it's super smart. That sounds like your expertise and like experience in negotiations came through in that. Because if you wouldn't have done that, I think it would have been quite challenging, or basically not possible for you to go and do your next thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was definitely something we had to have very clear agreement on before we could really start StreamKap. So yeah, it worked out.
If you need to hire the right developers and ship fast, then React Squad is for you. A boutique agency that specializes in React and only works with fast growth startups. Visit reactsquad.io to learn more.
Awesome. And then let's jump back to today. How big is StreamKap right now, just in terms of the team, or like what stage you guys are at?
Yeah, so we're 10 people today. We haven't really formally announced it, but we closed a funding round late last year, and another in late 2022 as well. So we've raised a little over $3 million in total, and 10 people, and good kind of customer base using StreamKap in production today already.
I mean, that's a super lean team for then. Like, I guess it's seed round of 3 million, right?
Yeah.
How, from a sales perspective, from the outside, it sounds like an enterprise sales play. Is that right? Or like, what does the go-to-market look like?
Yeah, so it's something where right now we actually have a pretty broad spectrum of customers. So as we start to think about scaling, one of the key questions we have is like, where do we really want to double down and focus? Our probably the most density that we have is within more mid-market companies, where they have enough scale where they really start to care about moving data at low latency and at scale. And we do also have some enterprise customers, but we're building the platform for enterprise in the sense of having like the SOC 2 Type 2 and the sort of requirements that those type of businesses expect. But as a young company, we're kind of a bit more focused on businesses that can move a little bit faster, and get that kind of faster growth and feedback cycles that you can get with somewhat more agile companies. We do have a couple startup customers as well, but that's not as much of our focus because usually they have fewer challenges associated with low latency and higher scale of data.
So is the problem you're solving also coming with just having to scale a service?
Yeah, it typically is. So there's certain things that you can get away with, just on a kind of on application backend database, Postgres or MongoDB, depending on what you're doing, for example, that, you can start to do some of this stuff directly on that database, but as you scale, you don't want to query your production database for analytical use cases. And so you want to be able to move that data to a separate, a data warehouse typically, or a real-time database that's more appropriate for those kind of queries. And those kind of challenges are the kind of thing that generally you start to do as you get to more scale in your business.
Let's double click on sales, because you have years of experience in it, and not most, but a lot of founders are very technical, engineers who then start companies, and for them sales is always a big question mark basically. So first off, you said mid-market. If you think mid-market, how big is such a company for you?
Yeah, so we're focused on sort of the roughly $100 to $500 million revenue companies. So you have a spectrum there on the size of the businesses, but generally, let's say 100 to 1,000 person companies, and that's kind of the segment we're looking at. And then some specialization within industries, where our system is not industry specific by any means, but there's certain sectors where you have a greater requirement for sort of low latency data. So, things like logistics and payments, and point of sale, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been my next question. Basically, after you said, like, okay, company size, which is like everybody can do it in like Apollo or LinkedIn or whatever, and then basically making that net closer to the vertical. So that's basically where you just think, okay, where do we as a company solve the biggest pain? And then you just like, did you specifically pick 3 verticals, or like how did you make that decision? Like very like framework driven, basically, on like, okay, who are we going to attack? Because especially as a 10-person team, you can't go after everyone, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the challenges early on in a company, is you have this balance of your capacity constrained, and so you want to be as focused as possible, but there's also a dimension of early startup life where discovery is really important, and you don't know all the answers, and so if you go in with too narrow of a focus, you might miss where there's some opportunity. So I think we started a bit more exploratory, and not going after sectors we kind of felt very confident were not relevant, but doing a bit more exploration around where we thought there was a good fit, and then that's still ongoing, frankly. So now we're being a bit more, as we kind of kick into this year, a bit more rigorous about like really testing some of these narrower focus areas, and getting to a place where today I'm doing all of the sales, and we're, as a company, we kind of create some content and things like that, which helps support like inbound leads. But basically, we're thinking about like, how do we get to a place where we've got something that's really systematic that we can give to new sales hires who aren't the founder, and can tackle that in a more repeatable way.
I love that. Is there anything you can share about how you do sales specifically, like without opening the kimono too wide, but just like for other founders listening to learn from that?
Yeah. So for us, I mean, we knew we were selling to a fairly technical audience, data folks and engineers. And so, they have a bit of a bias towards like wanting to find, solutions rather than being sold to, if that makes sense. So we did focus a lot on content, fairly technical content that, speaks to the type of, problems that those folks are trying to solve, generally at a fairly like low technical level of like, here's the specific thing I want to do. And that's been pretty successful for us. And then I'm just, doing outbound on, mostly on LinkedIn, and in concert with, organic content there. And, we found that that's worked pretty well as a starting place. I mean, I think, for founders out there, like the fact that you're a founder, if you're an early stage company, you're reaching out to your customer segment, I think you get folks who self-select in their response to that, right? What we started with was really just, hey, we've got an idea, we'd love to talk to you about this, this is the problem we're thinking about trying to solve, and we'd love to get your feedback on it, right? And I think the folks who want to respond to that kind of question, first of all, will help give you helpful feedback, and then they might also be the type of person who wants to be a beta tester for your product, and then ultimately, probably a good fit for like early customers, that kind of thing. So I definitely, I think that would be something I would encourage founders to do, is really try and get out there and connect with your users. And I think there's a good positive feedback loop on that. If you find the right segments.
Yeah. And also, if I didn't look wrong, I think you have over like 10K people following you on LinkedIn. And I bet this must also basically, if you send me an invite, I click on your profile, I see that you're super legit, both in terms of your CV, but also just like the social proof you get from posting organic content, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think we're we're creating a lot of content and kind of engaging with discussions that are really relevant to this audience, data folks and engineers working in data, that ultimately helps facilitate that a lot.
And quick question regarding the org chart, which I'm not sure why, but I'm kind of a nerd about orgs. So you're the one doing sales, and then I get you have the CTO co-founder. Like, what's the rest of, like, what are the other 8 people on the team doing? Is it like all engineers, or like what's the mix like?
Yeah, they're all engineers at this point. So, there's a variety of roles within that, front end and back end engineers and some streaming specific folks. And, I think that's the bulk of their work. Some of those engineers are, interested in engaging with customers as well. And so that we have, sort of solution architects dimension of what they're doing, sort of engaging with customers and, a bit of content. I think everybody contributes a little bit to that if they're interested in, writing up, solution blogs and things like that.
Love that. And then a couple days ago, I did a recap of like the last 50 interviews we did. And the one thing when I usually ask people like, what's the biggest mistake you did? A lot of them say, yeah, I was a tech guy. I hated sales and I hired like sales guys before doing founder-led. I mean, you're obviously not making that mistake. But one thing that came up in those discussions also was, when is the right time to hire those first 2 sales guys? Like if you listen to the OG Jason Lemkin, okay, hire 2 guys so like that is not a person issue. But like, how do you make the decision when it's the right timing to say, okay, I've proven founder-led sales enough that now I can make those hires confidently?
Yeah. So I think the way I'm thinking about it, I've hired a lot of salespeople in my career, and I think we still have some questions to answer. But the key thing is repeatability, and something that is repeatable specifically for someone who's not going to be a founder. Right? There's certain things that I can repeatably do that I sort of just get away with because I've got a founder title in my LinkedIn, for example. So I think, for example, my outbound on LinkedIn is probably a lot more productive than a salesperson's would be because, people are just more willing to chat to a founder. Right. So, I think the key thing is saying like, okay, have I built something that if I really put my sales hat on and I'm running this program like a salesperson, it's something I feel like I can successfully get them trained and on board and be able to do that repeatedly. So, and I've seen like even in more mature organizations, the challenges that come with not giving great enablement. And, you have to, there's a balance there, right? Like we're not going to have super mature enablement program for our first hires, but, you need to think about like, what are those salespeople going to need to be successful? And, so I think, the very simple way to put it is having something repeatable, that you can give them a playbook and, be confident that like they've got the tools to be successful. And then, as you say, I think the idea of having 2 people start at the same time has a number of positive benefits. One of them being, it helps give you signal on whether the problem is an individual or your process or market, what have you. But it also gives them some camaraderie and competition and that, which I think are also important, right? It's a little bit harder to be, that one sales rep reporting to to a CEO than it is to have like, someone else that you're working with. And like I say, salespeople generally, one attribute that you want to hire for is, competitiveness. And so if you've got a couple of people they're going to drive each other as well.
That's a good point. What would be like 3 quick tips for like hiring a good salesperson?
Yeah. So I think it probably depends a little bit on what stage you're at, right? Like, at the first stage, you do want, as much as you want to, give people some repeatable process, it is definitely not going to be, super refined, I think by definition. And so you want someone at the early stage who's, pretty entrepreneurial. You want them to be able to go out and say like, right, I'm going to give you a fairly, repeatable, but fairly bare bones process. And, I want to see that you can do that. So I think hiring for folks who've been successful in other relatively early stage companies is pretty key. And, someone who's a top rep at Salesforce, that does not mean that they're going to be successful in an early stage startup. And so I think looking at like experience and historical success is a really key aspect, but you need to think about it through the lens of like, what is the world that you're in, and making sure you're hiring for somebody who's got, experience in that, both from a perspective of, your side and also theirs, right? Like, they may not be very happy if if they're accustomed to sort of big company, tons of leads coming in and they don't have to, a lot of stuff being done for them and they're just focused on selling versus, a much more open-ended role that's going to come with being in a startup.
That makes a ton of sense. And then switching gears again a bit, I mean, founding a startup is not always like roses and sunshine, basically. So what's one thing that you as a founder or your startup is like struggling with a bit right now?
I think it's that everything, it just takes a little bit longer and is more complex than you anticipate, right? And so, I think one thing that we've probably done, I think we're doing a better job of now, frankly, but which is last year, maybe we probably did too much chasing problems that an individual customer had, rather than being a bit more systematic about saying like, this is the direction we're going, and saying no to customers. So yeah, I think that, especially coming from sales, like having discipline around saying no when there's money available is a challenge, but it is something, you can't boil the ocean when you're a small team, and you have to be focused. So, and that was something that, Ricky and I at the very beginning, like, we're both aware of that issue, and we said, we need to be disciplined. But, when in the practical realities of things, like, when you're an early stage company, a part of the value that, customers see in that is that, they kind of know that you're going to be willing to be flexible and move quickly. And so you have to balance, that willingness to go and solve the real practical customer problems with remaining focused and not taking on too much. So, I'd say that I think we've gotten better discipline on that, but and I don't know that we made a lot of explicitly wrong decisions, but in aggregate, you do need to be really thoughtful about how many things that you take on, and and making sure that you're focusing on the right problems and things that are it goes back to repeatability, right? That you're solving a problem that a bunch of other people are going to have as well, and not doing something that's one-off. Or actually, even in that context, right? It might be everything you're doing is repeatable, and a bunch of other companies would have it, but you just can't do everything. So, yeah, trying to balance that, that prioritization is probably one of the biggest challenges that we've seen.
Focus is simple and not easy to execute.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. One final question: what's something that you learned in the last 1, 2, 3 years where you think, okay, learning that really stepped up my game as a founder?
I mean, I guess the big thing, if I look back to when we first started the company, I'd never raised money before. And, I had a bit of confidence because Ricky had, but, I was taking the CEO role. And so, it's my job to do fundraising. And, so I dove in head first there, and it's been a big learning journey, and initially was lacking confidence for sure. And, I tried to say, okay, it's just the sales process, which has a lot of shared elements with sales, but it's definitely not the same thing as sales. And so, I think it's been a learning around how do you think about, the process of raising money, and how do you approach that? Because it has I think that to put a fire point on how it's different from sales, because you are going out and pitching and you're selling the vision of where you can go and what it will mean for the person on the other side of that exchange. But the investor side of things is, especially with VCs, it's just a very small world, right? And so the network nature of your audience when you're fundraising is very different from the the sales world, where yes, there's advantages to having sort of social proof and things like that, but like it's not such a small pool of customers that you're selling into, that they all know each other and are sharing information all the time, and that is the case in the venture world. So I think you have to think a little bit more carefully about like, how do you present yourself to that, because there's some positive aspects to that and negative aspects, but that's been a learning process to, and I wouldn't say that I have solved that problem. We've been successful in raising money, so that's good, but I think thinking about how do you get the FOMO going and drive urgency in the fundraising process are all things that are a different set of skills that I've had to learn and I'm still learning.
It makes a ton of sense. But I mean, raising and closing a round in this environment is still no easy feat. So I think you at least got the at least the basics of it down already.
Yeah. I mean, it's look, I'm happy we were able to get folks on board, and we've got a great a great set of investors supporting us. So I think we must be doing something right. And I think ultimately that's down to we're solving a real problem. We've got real customers, and it's a big market. So some of the key aspects there are part of the problem that we've decided to go and solve, and then you can learn a little bit on refining your execution on the pitch and what have you if you've got those key base elements.
I love that. Then Paul, thanks a ton for coming on. And as a final ask, where can people find you online?
I'm on LinkedIn, Paul Dudley. I think you should be able to find me pretty quickly. And then also on Twitter, a little bit less active, but kind of working on it with, or X, I guess I should say, at Paul Dudley. But yeah, mostly LinkedIn is probably the best place.
And we will make sure to link everything up below so that people can find you.
Yeah, and StreamKap.com, I should say, as well, for your data streaming needs if you're in that world.
That's the most important of all.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks a ton, man.
Thanks, Nicholas.
If you like this episode, then you'll love the SaaS Operator, a weekly newsletter brought to you by EarlyNode, with actionable insights from SaaS experts in the industry, delivered right to your inbox every Tuesday for free. Visit earlynode.com to subscribe.